We received some great news today about America's efforts to combat COVID-19, but you probably wouldn't know that if you watch the panic-peddling corporate media. So why are they trying to keep you in constant fear? I'll explain. It's time for Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. Pharmaceutical giant PFIZER announced today that it has submitted its request to the FDA for emergency use authorization of their COVID-19 vaccine. If approved, which is likely to happen in very short order, vaccinations could begin in a matter of weeks. Here's what PFIZER CEO Albert Bourla had to say about the forthcoming rollout.
Our goal is to start shipping in a couple of hours after we receive the green light. We have already produced more than 20 million doses in our warehouses, and we continue as we speak, producing more and more. This is why we said that by the end of the year, which is in 5 weeks, we expect to have 50 million doses that we can distribute to the world.
50 million doses by the end of the year. I'm old enough to remember when President Trump was being made fun of by the media and even some of his own experts for suggesting that a vaccine could be ready by the end of 2020. But here we are. Friends, this is arguably the best news we've received since the beginning of the pandemic. This is the news that we've been waiting for to bring this whole nightmare to an end. Yes, we're still going to have infections in the coming months, and yes, we're not totally through this, but the light at the end of the tunnel is getting brighter. But you wouldn't know any of this. You wouldn't get any sense of it at all if you watched the corporate press, which seems so much more interested in making you more afraid than ever before. Just take a look at some of the headlines. The U.S. COVID-19 outbreak is worse than it's ever been. Why aren't we acting like it? Coronavirus soars. Hospitals hope to avoid an agonizing choice. Who gets care and who goes home? Hospitals overrun as U.S. reports 1 million new coronavirus cases in a week. And U.S. reaches 250,000 deaths from COVID. A long winter is coming. You get the picture. Be afraid. Be terrified. Panic. Why is that? Is there any motivation that we can point to here? Is there anything that we can see happening that's not really about keeping you safe? Oh, I think we all know the answer to that. Why is the media so invested in this? Well, for one thing, there is a business model here. Panic porn, as some call it, putting out the most frightening possible headlines, talking about the possibilities of long-term COVID, of bizarre, strange, exotic side effects of COVID, all of this stuff we've seen for months, and then it always fades away. It's just one story, one person said, one study that no one even checked out indicated the following. But you see, they've already got the clicks. By the time you figure out that it's really not what they were saying it is, the media's made their money off of you by keeping you afraid. But there's an even bigger reason that, yes, it's part of the business model. Beyond that, though, they turn this into a political weapon against Trump. And they saw how effective it was. I don't think anybody really believes, given the election turnout that we just had, that if this were 2019 and not 2020, Donald Trump wouldn't have sailed to re-election. So this was made very political. And in that process, what did they see? They could terrify people, not only make them more depressed and make them want to blame somebody, perhaps the President of the United States. They certainly tried their best to make that a reality. But also that people who are scared are more easily controlled. You have to remember that the mainstream media, the left, the Democrats, they have a radical agenda for the country. They want to transform, to continue transforming the country toward socialism, toward collectivism, central planning, involvement in every aspect of your life, telling you what you can and can't do, putting a committee of experts in charge of the most minor decision. How can they achieve that? Aren't we the give me liberty or give me death country? Aren't we the country founded with certain ideals in place that then ratified a constitution and a Bill of Rights? Well, as we know, the Bill of Rights has been at least partially nullified during this pandemic. And it's been a shock to many of us how much they've been able to get away with because they are keeping you in fear. They want the clicks, but they also want the control. There's no benefit from the media taking a balanced approach here. They don't really view their purpose as to inform you, to present you with the facts. No, they're trying to push an agenda And to do that, they have a narrative to uphold. And the narrative goes as follows. We've done a terrible job in America with COVID, worse than any other place in the world. Don't pay any attention to the numbers that show that's just flatly not true. Oh, and what was the country that came up with the first vaccines? What is the country that's going to be able to end this pandemic once and for all? That's right. Good old US of A, Operation Warp Speed. The private sector, in partnership with the Trump administration, will bring this whole thing to a screeching halt. But do they ever give credit for that? No. What we hear is that Trump denied the virus. They even go out there and say that he does not care about all of the death. They've become unhinged in their opposition to the president. Maybe they were from the very beginning. And that has translated into their view of how we should deal with this virus. The panic over Trump's fascism turned into the panic over Trump's unwillingness to even see this virus as real. This is crazy. They never should have let it get to this point. The media weren't the guarantors or the guardians of our liberty or even the presenters of fact. They operated as operatives of the Democrat Party. And that meant making people as terrified of this as is possible. They don't tell people what the real numbers are. If you're under the age of 40, you have basically no reason to fear this at all. That's what the numbers tell us. If you're under the age of 60, there's a very good chance that you'll be fine even if you get it. Even over 60, here we go. Look at these statistics. If you're 70 plus years old, it's almost a 95% chance. 95% of people 70 years and over who get this will survive. There is no perfect security and there's no perfect prevention of virus spread. All these mandates we see, all these decisions being made by government, it's just piling more cumbersome tyranny on top of other. That's what's happening here. So they want to keep you afraid because they want to control you. And that's also shown to you in the way they talk about politics right now. The pandemic is terrible, the worst it's ever been. We're weeks away from vaccine distribution. Our ability to treat this is leaps and bounds ahead of where it was 9 months ago. We have more and more reason to believe that we are going to get through this once and for all, but they want you to be more afraid now than you've ever been. Don't go to Thanksgiving. Don't go to Christmas with your family. Stay locked in a closet until maybe the Biden administration that they're so sure is going to happen decides it's safe for you. That's the plan. And they want to implement so many other aspects of the far left agenda, and they recognize that a terrified population that'll just be so thankful to be given back the freedoms that never should have been taken away in the first place, that population will be easy to mold to progressive leftist ends. You also see the use of panic as a tool right now in the transition. Be terrified of that too. Trump isn't going to leave the White House. He won't give this up. We're going to have to send in, I believe Obama said, SEAL Team 6 to get him out of there. Ha ha, so funny. The president is doing everything so far by the book within the process. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't add up about the election. We've been talking to you about that here on the show. And all we want are answers, real answers. But the media, instead of saying, hold on, let's get our facts straight, what do? They turn up the dial again on Trump is a tyrant. Fascism is coming to America. Trump's not going to leave. In fact, this is a huge national security risk. Our enemies around the world see this and recognize it as an opportunity to destabilize American democracy. What does this even mean? This is nonsense. He's going to court. He's getting answers. We have lawyers presenting arguments before judges. When this process is done, we will respect the result. That's part of, will you respect the results of the election? Yes, we absolutely will. And the legal process is about getting the proper result for the election. They just try to cut that part off as though it doesn't count. It most certainly does. But instead of dealing with the real argument, what do? Trump is a fascist. He's not going to leave office. Instead of accepting that they never should have shut down schools, that another round of lockdowns is counterproductive, that the science does not support this, what do? What do they say? You better be more terrified than ever of COVID-19. The same day that we're being told a vaccine is weeks from distribution. It's not an accident, friends. These are mechanisms of control. Don't let them own you with fear. Up next, we got my friend Bill Spadea from New Jersey, who's got some worthwhile views on this same topic, so we'll join him in a second. Stick around. My friends, our constitutional republic has rarely faced the perils we do today. Mob rule, the push for socialism, violence, the suppression of freedoms. Edmund Burke said it best, all it takes for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. If you want to help preserve America right now, while we still can, join AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. It's the fastest growing conservative group in America. Joining AMAC gives you access to money-saving benefits, cutting-edge news, and a great bi-monthly magazine. But more importantly, AMAC fights for you. A socialist storm is brewing. You can see it. If you care about your future the way I know you do, join AMAC today. Over 2 million constitutional conservatives like you and me have already joined AMAC. Stand with us by joining right now. Just go to amac.us/buck. That's amac.us/buck. The benefits of AMAC membership are great, but the cause is even greater. Join today at amac.us/buck. Lockdowns, mask shaming, curfews. Some of the things Americans have become far too familiar with over the past 9 months, and with case numbers rising in some states, government leaders aren't wasting any time imposing more tyrannical restrictions. Here's a look at some of the most recent ones. California Governor Gavin Newsom issued a month-long curfew. New York City public schools closed yesterday as Mayor Bill de Blasio warns Governor Cuomo that he's about to close indoor dining and gyms as well. Plus, the CDC is now begging Americans to avoid Thanksgiving travel after their holiday guidelines urged us not to sing, listen to loud music, or drink alcohol to, quote, prevent the spread. But is it really time for another panic shutdown? Our next guest says absolutely not. Let's bring in Bill Spadea. He's the radio host on NJ 101.5 and former host on Fox TV. Bill, great to see you, man.
Hey, Buck, great to be with you. Thanks for having me today. What a world we live in.
It's crazy and getting crazier, unfortunately. So let's just start with this. You're in New Jersey. I'm here in New York. We're in two of the worst hit places. And as I've been telling my radio audience from the very beginning of this, what you see them trying in New York, they're definitely going to try in other blue states across the country. It's just a matter of, we're kind of the vanguard of the lockdown, if you will, or we're at the tip of the spear of the crazy. And then in any cities, even if you live in Dallas, people think, oh, I live in Texas. So I think what happens here in New York and New Jersey has big implications for everybody else. Yeah. What do you see happening right now? Just talking about schools. New York has shut down schools, and we have the director of the CDC, Redfield, telling us this. Play it.
Our big threat for transmission is not the public square. It's small family gatherings where people become more comfortable. They remove their face mask and they get together, and it's this silent epidemic that begins to transmit. But it's not inter-school transmission. The truth is, for kids K through 12, one of the safest places they can be, from our perspective, is to remain in school.
They've shut down schools. Yeah. Bill, you got the CDC director not just saying it's not dangerous, they're safer in school from COVID than they are at home. Yeah. What's going on?
Well, remember, Redfield is also the same guy that said that the mask that we know has mesh openings that are 100 times larger than the virus. He said they were actually safer than any future vaccine. So his credibility is shot, I think, to begin with. But the most important thing here is that we have concrete examples that not only are schools safe, but look at what has happened across the world. Look at Sweden, 1.8 million school-age kids between the age of 1 and 15 all stayed in school and daycare throughout the entire pandemic, even at the height in March and April, and no one died. So he's right about one thing, but the actions don't follow their words, because this is an all-out assault on our way of life. This is shut Americans down, keep them isolated and quiet. If we were really listening to the science, the reality is you obviously would not be wearing a mask in your own home. We would be encouraging people to get out to the gym. And as far as the CDC suggestion about not drinking alcohol, didn't we just learn that mouthwash may be a killer of COVID? So, we've got so many mixed messages coming, but the biggest implication here is that kids are being hurt. And I would say this, Buck, that there are two sides to this. On one hand, you got to get the kids back in school. If this guy is saying it, why is every blue state governor not saying, okay, there you have it, the science, the medicine, keep the kids in school. But the other side of it is, it's how they are in school. The idea of children being isolated, distanced, masked, and being taught to fear one another. God forbid you hug your friend or go play ball outside or inside in the gym. You might kill someone's grandma. This is a horrific, horrific mental assault, an emotional assault on these kids. It's bad stuff. So in my opinion, get them back in school, but only if we can do it the right way.
Bill, it seems like this time around, maybe because we've already been through one series of these lockdowns and heard many promises from public health authorities and projections and assertions and the modeling, and we've seen they're wrong a lot, and we've seen that if you take everything they say to the bank, you're going to end up bankrupt. So what I want to know is, why isn't there more of a pushback, and do you think there'll be a greater pushback this time around? We've got parents here in New York finally protesting closures. I feel like because we're now past the election, I know the election is not yet finished and determined, but because we're past the election, I keep going on radio here in New York City and telling everybody, look, I don't care what your political party is. This isn't really about that. It got turned into that during the election season. Anybody who looks at the data, Democrat or Republican, should know that schools are open. We got parents, for example, who are finally protesting. Do you think we're going to see more of this? Do you think people have had enough?
I do, and I'll give you a great example. The chief of police in Howell, New Jersey, right in the heart of central Jersey, right at the Jersey Shore, the chief of police, Andrew Kudrick, yesterday sent a letter to his police officers and the entire police department staff and said, effectively, we are not going to respond to calls for mask violations and social distancing violations. That is not the role of their police department. And he, of course, was attacked by Governor Murphy for doing that. But the bottom line is that when you get the police officers who are charged with enforcing this nonsense starting to push back and say, we're just not going to do it. We're hearing that the Boston police are doing the same thing, saying, you know what, this is not the right role for law enforcement. We're not here to be the mask police. And if you have a problem with somebody's COVID restriction violation, call the health department. We also saw this with Pat Lynch, who was courageous in his pushback to Mayor Bill de Blasio, forcing the mayor to hire his own watchdogs for COVID restriction violators, because they said, look, the NYPD is not going to do it. This is not our job. We are not going to pit officers of the law against average citizens, knowing full well that there is a very moral and legal question as to whether these governors and mayors even have the right to lock people down like this. We've got the mayor in Newark, New Jersey's largest city, calling for now a 10-day stay-at-home lockdown starting the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. It is a complete outrage. It's an affront to civil liberties, religious liberties, and economic liberties. I don't think it stands, and I think it's about time that cops across the country push back. We've seen a lot of this with sheriffs and local chiefs. We need to see more of it. I'll say this, Buck, I think this is truly the silent majority. People are fed up. They know the truth. COVID is the new flu. The survival rate is north of 99.99% if you're under the age of 40. And you look at those numbers and say, whoa, hold on a minute. I'm most likely going to be fine, not even sick if I get it. The idea that it's going to mutate and come back faster every single year tells us we just replaced the flu with COVID. We need to now get back to normalcy. And I do believe, yes, there will be pushback. And I'll tell you, Buck, when it comes to the schools, how many parents are struggling in New York and New Jersey to pay the mortgage, pay the taxes? The cost of living out here is outrageous. And you've got mom and or dad now having to play the role of teachers. Meanwhile, the teachers' unions are fighting to keep the same level of pension, same level of pay, same level of staffing, and parents are doing all the work. So and, it's a disaster.
People like you and me, Bill, who are just trying to look at what we're learning, what we have learned during this, and spread factual information. I just want to share this. Right. The other of you saw this. I posted about the Danish study. This is a peer-reviewed scientific study. Facebook flagged it. Flagged it. I am not allowed to share. This is the same information was checked in another post by independent fact checkers. False information, they're saying. I'm actually sharing on Facebook a peer-reviewed 6,000 person study of mask protection in Denmark from scientists. No one denies it, and Facebook says, no, this is disputed. Okay. In that case, I guess people shouldn't know that wearing a mask this is now only for individuals, not for protecting others, which I know is the whole other debate. But if you're thinking that someone in a room with you who has the virus, you wear a little mask, you're going to be fine. This study said probably not. And it's a big study.
You're right about that. It's a big study. I'm glad you mentioned the number, right? 6,000 people participated in this study over 30 days. And then you compare that to the Pfizer numbers for this vaccine they're potentially going to roll out. And I understand it was a 94-person sampling. So, and nobody is criticizing Pfizer. They're going after studies that don't fit the narrative. The reality is we've talked about this ad nauseum for the past few months. You've done it. I've done it. Many others out there saying, look, we know the masks don't work. You're giving people a false sense of security. We actually had the state epidemiologist, Anders Tegnell, in Stockholm for the Swedish government say the masks could actually be very dangerous because of the false sense of security. And, the idea that there are certain precautions that the CDC talked about for decades when it comes to the flu. Stay home when you're sick and gross. Don't sneeze on your friends and wash your hands. Basic stuff. Those are sensible guidelines. The minute we got into universal mask wearing, and somebody explained to me the difference between a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, right? 2-year-olds don't have to wear it, 3-year-olds do. And what happened to medical exemptions of all these people that have asthma and other breathing and respiratory illnesses that are not only uncomfortable? It's nuts.
It's just arbitrary. It's just arbitrary nonsense being piled on top of arbitrary nonsense. But I'm glad there's some of us out there who are just all I'm doing is pointing out the absurdity and the contradictions, as are you. Not playing a doctor on TV, but can still know when someone's lying to me. Bill, great to see you out in New Jersey. Bill, appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Buck. Always good to be with you. Thanks.
As COVID cases rise, the left is looking for something to blame. What'd they come up with? Not enough mask mandates, of course. We'll separate fact from fiction and that in tonight's Buck Brief. I want you drinking the best coffee possible, and that comes from my friends at Black Rifle Coffee. This is what I drink every day, 3 or 4 times a day, and I have it shipped right to my house. It's so convenient. Black Rifle is veteran-owned and operated. In fact, Black Rifle Coffee has donated over 45,000 pounds of coffee to soldiers deployed overseas, law enforcement officers, wildland firefighters on the West Coast, and medical workers during the COVID-19 response, and that's just in 2020 alone. For every coffee purchase you make throughout November, Black Rifle Coffee will send you a bag of their limited edition holiday roast to a service member currently deployed overseas and will be delivered by Christmas morning. Being founded and operated by veterans, the team at Black Rifle Coffee knows what a quality cup of coffee means to active duty troops spending the holidays away from home. Want to support the cause? Go to blackriflecoffee.com/buck today and check out the freshest coffee in America. The team has spent thousands of hours tasting and sourcing coffee from all over the world. blackriflecoffee.com/buck gets you 20% off coffee, apparel, and gear, as well as 20% off your first month of the coffee club. The Orwellian maneuvers of our statist overlords have not ceased since the supposed Biden victory earlier this month. If anything, they're doubling down on the lockdown madness. Mask mandates are becoming a nationwide phenomenon, and Biden has already claimed that he would institute a federal mask mandate if, in fact, he takes the Oval Office. But let's ask a question here, folks. Are these mandates actually effective? Are they backed by science? Have they shown any real results in the places that they've been tried? And why did the so-called experts flip-flop dramatically on the question of masks over the last several months? These are the questions most journalists should be asking. Instead, they're writing glowing reviews of Andrew Cuomo and his disastrous response as governor of New York to the COVID pandemic. So we'll step in where the journalists have not and explore the actual efficacy of these mask mandates on today's Buck Brief. Now let's understand. I'm going to put aside for a second whether or not a mask, if properly used under certain circumstances, is an effective barrier against COVID-19. I don't want to deal with that. I'm looking now at we'll deal with that another time, at public health policy, a mandate. This is the government saying you must do this thing. And we have dates for this, we have data, we can look at that to get a sense as to whether or not that public health measure, that decision by government authorities to insist on penalty of either fine or in some cases even arrest, to insist that you do this, wear a mask, for health purposes. when you look at it, you see there's a troubling trend here, that there are plenty of places where they had mask mandates instituted, and then not only did it not, and brother, this is a good start here. These are the states that require masks now. You'll see that it's most of them, except Florida in terms of big population states. It's most of them, and we're having huge spikes all across the country. So your first observation here should be pretty much every heavily populated state in the United States already has a mask mandate and has had one for months. Okay, let's look at some specifics. And this is at a time when cases are rising all over the place. A chart of Utah's mask mandate. It'll tell you that right around the middle of April, when things were first getting really bad with COVID in some places, they put in a mask mandate. And then if you look at it afterwards, it's in fact a few months later that Utah sees its big spike in cases. So mask mandate goes in, there's really just not a whole lot of change, and then in about June, July, you see big spikes. Okay, Kentucky, a pretty reliably red state, there you go. They put a mask mandate in on the 11th of May, and they had a similar spike to a lot of other places across the country in June and July. So mask mandate goes in, still big spike. Okay, let's take it overseas for a second here. This one was particularly interesting because France had a spike in cases, you see it there. France was hit pretty badly by COVID-19, and without a mask mandate, the cases receded dramatically, almost disappeared into May and June, and everyone was saying, oh, France has controlled this, and they've done a wonderful job, so much better than Trump and the Trump administration. That's what the media was telling us. But then the indoor mask mandate goes into effect in July, and then boom, look at that, going up like the side of a mountain. And then we can go to a couple more states here just to give you a sense of this. Let's just go to California. We don't need to get into every single one. Let's go to California here. You see, they put a mask mandate in June, and from when they put it in, cases have basically just gone up and up and up. Now, there's a lot of moving pieces here, and I know that people would quibble with this, and they would say, well, are we finding out about more cases because of more testing? Well, if you look at these places, they also have had big surges in hospitalizations in the last month or so. In some cases, they had them over the summer. Hawaii put a mask mandate indoors and outdoors in place over the summer, and they had their big spike in the summertime after the mandate went into place. So you have to start wondering, what is the utility of a government action that does not have the intended effect? Why do we keep doing this thing, and what's really the overall purpose behind it? They say it's because, well, it would be worse if we didn't do this. And the science tells us that we've got to do this. But let's remember that we've gone quite a ways here. This was Dr. Fauci at the beginning of the pandemic, and I'm not going to forget this. Play it.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often, there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask, and they keep touching their face.
And can you get some schmutz sort of staying inside there?
Of course. But when you think masks, you should think of healthcare providers needing them and people who are ill.
So what have we learned since then about the science that would make such a statement seem like it could go from that to where we are now, where we've got Fauci saying that you absolutely need to wear a mask, and we had the CDC director just weeks ago telling us that a mask is more effective than vaccines. Friends, this is lunacy. There's no other way to see this. This is mass hysteria, there's a panic going on, and we can't have adult conversations about what public health measures really work and which ones are just an excuse for greater control and for certain people to bludgeon their political enemies with the claim that they are listening to the science and the other people are not. Mask wearing did get turned into this whole symbol of anti-Trumpism. I know it's absurd. That's what happened. And now that we're past the election, wouldn't it be nice if we could separate these things and just look at what's really happened? These policies of lockdown and mask wearing have not had the promised effect. We're about to go into another series, a long series. Remember, we didn't really have the COVID wave hit America till February, March of last year. We were almost through the winter. We're just starting a winter now. The questions that remain are we allowed to enjoy basic freedoms? Are we allowed to go out of our homes, to see our loved ones, to enjoy our lives for the next 4 or 5 months? Or are we going to be told, listen to the science that constantly changes and is never explained to us? And when I say the science, I mean the public policy health experts out there who have a lot to answer for, a lot of explaining to do, but I wouldn't hold your breath. I don't think you're going to get answers from them anytime soon. Big tech censorship on major platforms like Twitter and Facebook, leading to a boom in conservative alternatives like Parler. Is it going to last? Comedian and online personality Nicole Arbour joins us to discuss when we come back.
Is Twitter a publisher?
Is Twitter a publisher?
Yes.
No, we are not. We distribute information.
Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey testifying before the Senate on Tuesday, alleging that the tech giant has not participated in censoring or suppressing conservative voices, but then he says this.
More than a year ago, the public asked us to offer additional context to help make potentially misleading information more apparent. We did exactly that, applying labels to over 300,000 tweets from October 27th to November 11th.
So which is it, Jack? Twitter is or is not a platform that we have to all treat as such? Well, joining us now to talk about it is Nicole Arbour. She is the host of the Nicole Arbour Show, and you know her from her over 1 billion views on TV. That's a lot, billion with a B. So there you go.
Yeah,
good to see
billion
you.
Online.
Online, I meant online. Yes, thank you. So you understand the world of the interwebs. We've got Jack Dorsey here, CEO of Twitter, telling us all that they're kind of a platform, but they also decide to censor things. This is a big part of cancel culture. We used to be told that they weren't going to have any bias in this. What do you think's really going on here? Is Silicon Valley and the rest of the tech giants, are they going to try to clean up their act, or do we need to have new platforms?
I think we need to have new platforms, 100%. I think that they're not going to cancel everyone out because it's not good for business for them. You know, half of America has voted a different way than they would like them to. At least half. We're doing a recount right now. But we know that it's not good for business for them to just suddenly cancel the celebrities that a whole group of people look up to. It's just not good for advertising. However, if you want to be able to say whatever you want to say, you should probably find a platform like Parler. Parler has had an insane reach. The exact same video I posted on Instagram, I posted on Parler at the same time. Instagram got to 200,000 people. Parler got to 1.3 million. So when you're not censoring people, the stuff just goes.
Have you felt like there's been a lot of that going on, stretching back for years? I mean, I know you built your brand, your career a lot on YouTube. Have you been aware of this for a long time, but everyone just had to pretend like it was, first rule of censorship on YouTube is no one talks about censorship on YouTube?
100%, just like Fight Club. It's been happening for years. I actually got in a tiff with Facebook about a year ago over a joke that was very clearly satire, very clearly using comedic devices and literary devices. My joke was aimed at no one in particular. It was like an invisible target, but they still said it could constitute hate speech. And I went at it with them with their lawyers and their whole, ethics group. And I saw this coming. I'm like, they're just starting to take out comedians left and right over jokes, but not comedians who are very liberal. So I saw it coming.
I was going to ask, that's something that I've posed to liberal friends of mine in the political commentary space. They always say, it's not about bias against conservatives. And the immediate response one should give them is, tell me your liberal friend with a following online who has been banned for anything other than actual doxing or threatening to kill somebody. Always no answer.
It doesn't happen. I actually prepared for Facebook a list of other comedians who said jokes almost identical to mine, but on different topics, including Kevin Hart, Jim Jeffries. Jim Jeffries had a hilarious joke, and he was saying something along the lines of, we need to kill this person specifically, kill this. And he was doing this whole bit and Facebook promoted it, but it was okay because he was on a liberal network.
Yeah, we see this happening all the time on all these different platforms.
Yeah.
Now, finally, I feel like it's out there for all to see because of the Hunter Biden story suppression, where Jack Dorsey had to basically tell people, yeah, we treated it like hack material, even though it wasn't. We did get an apology from Dorsey, though, on an active member of the well, not us, but one day, but an active member of the Trump administration who runs, I believe he's the chief of either Border Patrol or Customs and Border Patrol. But here's Dorsey, yeah, it was Customs and Border Protection. Here's Dorsey apologizing for censoring what he says. Play it.
Can you tell me, in one sentence, what exactly is hateful about Commissioner Morgan's tweet that I just read?
Well, we evaluated this tweet again, and we found that we were wrong. That was a mistake, and it was due to the fact that we had heightened awareness around government accounts during this time. So that was a mistake. We reverted it.
The mistakes, Nicole, always seem to go in one direction. You have the chief of CBP. Effectively, the tweet was, I think, that walls are effective for border security purposes. That was marked as hate speech, and they pulled it down.
Wow, that's fancy. That's like, I saw Candace Owens today, a video she was in was pulled from YouTube as hate speech because she said men and women are different, something along those lines, like men aren't women, women aren't men. Facts and science are apparently negotiable now. But the fun part is that you and I could joke about it and we understand how ridiculous it is. But there is a growing number of people who don't get just how stupid they sound doing things like this.
And there's
if you
also
don't sound exactly like me, get it out of here. But hate speech is wrong. Tolerance.
there was this time when they would always fall back on, it's the algorithm. We'd always hear it's the algorithm, right? That was the explanation they would give us. But then things would happen like, do you remember this one? Twitter for a while had a policy where if you told a journalist who, and these were all liberal journalists, who had just been fired from his job to learn to code, you would be suspended. That was the thing. I've never forgotten that because that was one of those times when they really showed us, oh, this is about protecting your buddies who live next to you in Park Slope in Williamsburg. Like, oh, okay, this is really something else now. This isn't the algorithm. But you know, you do not only all this online commentary and are operating on these platforms, as a comedian, it feels to me like comedians are on the forefront of trying to fight back against cancel culture. I've done Bill Maher's show a bunch of times, and even he will say that cancel culture stuff makes comedy not fun. And so comedians seems like they're the only ones who can push back. Is that beginning to happen as we get these new platforms? Like, will Parler allow for greater comedic freedom and therefore greater political freedom in your mind after that?
100%. And, you know, I've been saying this all week on different shows to different people. I think comedy's coming back. I think the new wave of comedians are so not woke. The ones that they've been around for years but maybe haven't popped yet, they're going all out. I think there's going to be a comedy boom like the 80s because when things get so crazy and tight and stringent and you can't say this, that's exactly when we come in to say it. And it's not just myself. There's like a freaking roster of rock star comics that are coming out of this nonsense.
You think
it's
that
like the rising of the comedic phoenix?
Do you think the Dave Chappelle series that came out, or the special that came out, what was it now, maybe a little over a year ago, was he part of that vanguard? Who do you think now is willing to push the boundaries of actual comedy?
Oh, I think everyone should be tuning into people like Ryan Long, if you don't know him yet, Chris DiStefano, Andrew Schultz is a lot of fun. John Crist is a lot of fun. He's like more of a Christian comic, but the last few weeks he's just been going at it on the political stuff in a really edgy way. Follow me, obviously, please and thanks. But I think there's going to be a lot of comics that people didn't know before that they're going to know real quick.
Can you tell us when the Nicole Arbour next project might be airing, the next show? Give us an estimate.
I have new videos all of the time on my Instagram. So I be Nicole Arbour and on Parler. And then my actual show, it looks like it's launching in January. So that'll be fun if I don't get canceled before then, right? Just kidding. They can't cancel me.
That's right. Uncancelable. That would be a great name for a show.
I am uncancelable. They've tried 10 times. Yeah.
There we go. Nicole Arbour, everybody. Follow her if you're not already. Nicole, have a great weekend. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Nice to see you.
Next up, we have a roundup of left-wing lunacy that we know of as the buckshot. Stick around. Economic uncertainty has left us all wondering about the future. The stock market seems to blow back and forth like the winds of political change. So what do we do to protect ourselves and our income for the future? For over a decade now, simple and conservative real estate investing has been the retirement answer for thousands of done-for-you real estate clients and is now part of my answer to retirement. I'm not just a believer in what done-for-you real estate does, I'm also a client. I recently closed on my first ever investment property with my friends at Done-For-You Real Estate. Their system flat out works. Done-For-You Real Estate found me an amazing property, got me the financing, got it all fixed up, and are now renting it out and managing it for me. They're an award-winning, groundbreaking company with 13 years of experience that allows everyday, hardworking Americans to finally own investment real estate without all the risk and difficulty of doing it on your own. Visit doneforyoubuck.com to learn more and to find out if you qualify to take advantage of what may be a once-in-a-generation opportunity to finally own your own investment real estate. Reporters getting petulant with Pence. Biden has another Biden moment, and a CNN commentator defends a vile criminal. Line up those clay pigeons. Time for some buckshots. We're supposed to have all these norms that will come back, right? That's one of the big things we're told about the possible end of a Trump administration and the beginning of this Biden administration that will just be everyone acting so calm, cool, collected, civilized, right? We all know that's a joke. We all know that the journos are just going to turn their ferocity against Trump against other Republicans. That's what's going to end up happening. And if you're wondering what that's going to be like, here you have reporters yelling at Mike Pence in the West Wing like they are auditioning for Who's the Craziest Person in D.C. Play it.
Thank you. All of you need to answer this.
Why is the federal government...
What is going on? And you're not working with the transition. You're all part of not recognizing democracy. You're all undermining the democratic election. Everyone...
Why are you undermining democracy? Why? These are reporters. What do you mean? How is that a question? How is that something that you could ask in the West Wing and expect to be treated seriously as a journo going forward? It's even tough to make out who was asking more offensive questions. Like, why do you hate puppies and old ladies? You know, they're just screaming at the vice president. It's the vice president of the United States. Just show some decorum. You don't have to like him. You don't even have to respect him on a personal level. But can you just act like professionals for a moment? No, they cannot. I know people say, oh, Buck, that's what reporters do. They shout questions. They don't shout questions like, why are you destroying democracy? That's ridiculous. It's absurd. But that is what they do. Kayleigh McEnany, White House press secretary. Sometimes she's got to flex on these journos a little bit. Show them what's up. Here she is dealing with some of them in a very Kayleigh fashion. Play it.
In that EUA, the emergency use authorization, we will be able to distribute this all across the country.
When are you going to admit you lost?
Yes, Kevin? Yeah. Sorry, Mario.
Okay. Thanks, Kayleigh. What is the president planning to discuss this afternoon with the two Michigan lawmen?
I don't call on activists, Kayleigh McEnany says. So there you go. She's fierce, does a good job in the role. We've also got reporters heckling her. Let's play this. I actually did these out of order, I just realized, but go ahead, play it.
Not forget the inexcusable transition or lack thereof that President Trump had to endure in 2016 and 4 years into his presidency. Thank you, everyone, for the very good and substantive questions today.
Do you understand that you lost?
I don't call on activists. I'm not an activist, and you haven't taken...
There we go. That was the line I was looking for. I was like, wait, where's that one? I forgot. I do them in reverse, but that happens sometimes. That's on me. But she does not call on activists, which the problem with that, I will say, is that about 95% of the DC press corps are activists. They might as well get a paycheck from the DNC. They should probably walk around with a little donkey symbol, around their neck to symbolize their fealty to the Democrat Party. So if you're not going to call on activists, well, then you're clearly not going to have a lot of journalists to be able to call on. But I appreciate somebody speaking the truth. I think that's the right move. I think that's something that we should all be going for. And we've also got Hillary Clinton. You know, there's a lot of transition stuff right now. There's a lot of people talking a little bit about how it threatens, it undermines our democracy because Trump hasn't already conceded and waved the white flag and said, I give Biden as president, all hail King Biden, right? Trump won't do that, and that is literally destroying our republic. That's what we're told. But Hillary Clinton is someone who knows a thing or two about willingness to put oneself before country. Protecting one man's ego is not worth damaging the legitimacy of our democracy. And I know I can just see all the Brooklyn hipsters, all the MSNBC watchers, and LA vegan tofu eaters just clapping and clapping on this. Oh, you show them, yes, Queen Hillary. The problem is that Hillary Clinton is the original I won't accept the results of the election person. And it's really hard for anyone to understand what's going on right now without understanding what happened in 2016. Because they did not accept the results of the election. In fact, instead of going through a good faith legal process, the way the Trump team is now, they decided to create the fable of Russia collusion and actually prosecute people, really ruin their lives, weaponize the deep state and the bureaucracy against an incoming administration. So they think we're going to take lectures from them now about what fair play is on this issue? Not on my watch, friends. I don't think so. I think we'll pass on that one. That's it for Hold the Line with Buck Sexton. Up next, the No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly. Have a great weekend, everybody. And as always, shields high.